How, I mean, just maybe a show of hands on this one. I think it's an important question.
What's your second question? You said they're related.
Well, the other question was if you cut off 2 hours at the end of the day.
Monday through Thursday.
Oh, okay. That's right. Let's just do the whole in the middle of the day. For how many people would that be a problem?
2 hours in the middle.
2 hours in the middle.
It would be an infrequent problem.
Okay.
And that wouldn't be at the top of the hour, that would be around the shift change at 3.
Right, it would be bracketing the shift change.
Okay, 1 to 3.
Where the shift changes. Okay,
I think you might be asking a lot of people. What about the people who come over doing services? That's the people who use that a lot.
Yeah, but how many would be there in the middle of the day?
Exactly.
We don't have data on those
ferries. How can we tell how full those ferries are?
Well, we have data, but it's sketchy because they have a very peculiar system of counting.
As a previous contractor, I just was thinking somebody building a house and trying to get some cement out here. You just couldn't have that type of a gap if you're pouring a sizable house.
Because you need to do it all day long?
No, just that.
You're not going to want to get stuck here.
Well,
yeah, it's expensive for cement to get stuck with 2 hours.
Okay.
What are you talking about saving on a 2-hour gap?
Do you remember?
The crew amounts to about $1 million. And right now, we typically run 19-hour days. So let's just say 20-hour days, each hour is 5%. So a 2-hour gap, it doesn't work out exactly this way, but just in round numbers, a 2-hour gap would be about $100,000 saved.
And we're talking about out of a $2.5 million budget total.
I just want to expand a little bit for those with families. The school gets out at 2 o'clock. So if you got your kid out of school and then run in, you really have to hospital. We'll be out until 11.
Okay. All right. Then the second part of the question is, how many people would be terribly inconvenienced? Is that a right way to frame the question? By cutting off the last ferry at 10 instead of 12, because the one that goes at 11 and one that goes at midnight, I guess, is very low ridership.
And you mean Monday through Thursday?
Monday through Thursday. Is that an issue for?
Well, there's a lot of shift work people, nurses on the island. I think there's the ones I've seen.
Yeah. So that's one of those that we'd have to get a good cross section around.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's the work aspect, people that work late hours, but there's also a social aspect that it feels to me, I cringed when I saw that. It just feels even more socially isolating than it already is living on an island. To not be able to go to weekday events or shows in town ever without having to spend the night in town.
I would say this, since we didn't do the comparison first. The Pierce County Anderson Island Ferry Monday through Thursday cuts off at 8:30 p.m. and the Skagit County Glamis Ferry cuts off at 10. And so we are an outlier, and we always have been, and I loved it when I was younger. And had a social life in town. But just to let you know, we're kind of uncommon in that respect.
Both of those islands are largely retirement communities, and they don't have schools. I mean, it's like people move to Waldron Island for a certain reason. People move to those islands. People move to this island, a lot of people, because you can have, and I know those days are over, you can sort of have it all. But that is what this island is. It has a school, it has a huge percentage of people who commute to town to work and go to school. That's why it's thrived. That's why it supported some businesses. And I just want to add one little thing, is I lived in a place that everything got so expensive that all the service people, the retired people, really depend on, the people that mow your lawns, sometimes serve at your restaurants, fix your house, do your chores, could no longer afford to live in that community. And it was amazing what happened. the whole community just sort of fell apart slowly until it was only actually incredibly wealthy people who had a lot of live-in help.
We talked a lot about that, Diane made that point, it's really the first meeting, I think. Yeah.
Just trying to balance some of this, thinking, well, if you were trying to do, say, 2 hours, it would not be that big of a deal to drop 1 hour from the midnight to the 11, and then maybe 1 hour in the middle of the day.
You wouldn't have as much savings.
Actually, you don't save much with just 1 hour in the middle of the day because of this engine may have to shut down and start up.
Well,
You save some, but you don't get.
But I'm saving on the labor that instead of,
Gotta have somebody on the boat.
They have to come early or something.
Can't run the boat without a crew member on the boat.
No, but they have to start it early, which is
That's right.
means that an hour is really only half hour.
So it does save some, and one suggestion we got from the DC Ferries guy last week that we had not talked to our crew about, but was that it would not take 3 crew members the additional half an hour
Right.
to start.
Just one, so you
Just
still would
one.
save.
So we're not clear on the savings, but just to let you know that dividing it up doesn't provide the same amount of savings as doing it.
Right. One more, this is maybe a simpler question. It's one that Riley's been talking about. He has a lot of data to show that, that this would be a better proposal, but we were curious to whether it would affect anybody else on the island negatively, particularly. If we change the dry dock month from September to April.
Well, I like that.
Hey, we got it, we finally got it.
I guess we don't need to see Riley's slides.
It's much cheaper to have the dry dock in the fall than it is in the spring when all the boatyards are busy. That's the reason they do it.
There is one other point.
I prefer it in the spring too, but that's.
We used to
that's
be
the
in the
reason.
spring, and I remember standing out in horrendous rainstorms constantly trying to wait for the ferry.
Much wetter in April than it is in September.
Wetter,
But windy and
harder to wait.
when do you get
It's
the
a little wetter. It's not.
A few years ago, we talked about changing the dry dock from fall to spring, and to support what Fred said, not only is it more expensive in the spring because other boats are getting ready for season, but it's hard to get a place in the dry docks.
Okay.
It's easier to get a place in the dry dock in the fall.
is that why they switched?
I distinctly remember Frank Albart saying at a
Yeah.
meeting that if they could get earlier in the year, they would get better prices. And I distinctly remember that.
Yeah, that's what it says.
And the other thing I want to say is that,
Midsummer.
for me, it doesn't make too much difference. However, it does in terms of September is a very busy month. You still have people reef netting going on and off the island. I have a lot of business myself. And the other thing you got to realize is that when the ferry isn't running in dry dock, we don't make as much money. The county is not making as much money off, and we need the ferry to make money. And that's when there's a lot more traffic than in April. I think it's an excellent idea. So we have to wear our rain gear or something. Come on, we're Northwestern.
Okay, Riley.
Project Bay.
Sounds like it's, yeah. Just move on, because I want to try to get through
I
this.
just want to remind you that we did have a dry dock in summer, and we did get a place to get it fixed, so it's not impossible to get it
Surely you
fixed.
can
You
reserve
just got to
it.
plan
I'd
ahead.
like to make a
Summer's
request
not
that
a problem,
people
spring
stop
is.
having these side conversations,
Okay.
because it's back here very hard to hear the regular questions.
Okay. I want to ask one, and I'm not sure how, I just need feedback from folks. And one of the things that I'm not sure about is I wrote this question and I'm not positive it's correct. But somebody, maybe one of you can tell me. It seemed like the 2 other ferry systems that we looked at did not have needs-based fares.
That's correct. What they have is anyone 65 or over, i.e. anyone who can provide a Medicare card or, driver's license, something. And people who are more than 40% disabled according to the Veterans Administration, or they have a doctor's certification to go through. And personally, my response was, there's no way we can afford to give everyone over 65.
Nor should we.
Right, let's forget about the over 65 part, but how important is it to Islanders to have needs-based fares? Let me tell you one background thing. When we met with Frank Abart and Steve Oliver, the county treasurer, Steve really wanted to get the administration of that program out of his office, and you know, that's not unreasonable. There are other ways that we can do it if we want to continue to do it. So I guess what I would like is to have some feedback just from folks.
Is there funding for the needs-based fare, or does it have to come out of the ferry users?
It's paid through on every ticket, it's subsidized on
Everybody else.
It doesn't have to be though, because the state ferries have a separate account set up, and there's this agency called the Northwest Regional Council, and our county ferry could have that same
Kathleen,
account.
I investigated that, and it doesn't work quite that way. We could not get it paid.
Did you talk to they have a lot
Yes.
of different, sorry, that's what she told me.
Yeah,
I would
sorry.
like something investigated where everyone pays full fare, and then there may be a rebate program for people with a needs-based request. Because frankly, I think there's a lot of abuse of the program. It's galling to see people that I know are not needs-based using a needs-based ticket. And I think if everybody had to pay up front, and then I don't know what that other system would be.
Or we can make there are ways of designing a system where there's, the abuse is more different.
Yeah,
But the question is, how important are needs-based to you all?
Yeah.
For me, the needs-based fares are very important. I would refer people to Betsy Schneider's comments on the website, well stated, clear, how it could be administered in a more efficient manner, and I think that it is extremely important to me.
Okay.
I agree. I think we should make this an open and equal community. Help others if we can.
I've heard that's a very common Lummi Island guide.
The whole fabric of the island, if you're talking philosophy, has always had a mixture of everybody here and everybody welcome. And I would hate to see that, I don't know, culture leave.
Yes.
It just seems a shame to throw out the needs-based fare program when the issue really is abuse. I think we need to address how to eliminate abuse and how to narrow that definition so that it's something that we all can support without question.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
We have a business on the island, and our main employee would probably not be able to work without that.
Okay.
I think it's important to have needs-based, but I will say I think that there is a major flaw in the system in that when the needs-based system came on board, suddenly people were paying less than they were originally paying for the fare before needs-based. So personally, I think it'd be great to have needs-based, but I think that even when it was first implemented, it should have been raised to at least meet what we were already paying, if not see a slight, very, very small margin. But, you know, I think that reducing it below $4, which is what we were all paying at the time, there was a miscalculation there.
Okay. Sir.
I think the need-based is good. I think the fraud that's involved in it is horrible. And I think the county ought to be very interested in that fraud, because that impacts school taxes and a whole bunch of other taxes besides just the ferry ticket.
What's
the
needs-based fare?
I can speak to that. The fraud he's referring to is that anyone over 61 who has income of $35,000 or less can get a break on their property taxes where they don't pay for some of the additional levies. They have to pay the same basic, like road tax or whatever. And the thing about it is that anyone who qualifies for that automatically qualifies for the needs-based fare. And the accusations of abuse I've heard basically have to do, you know, Steve and Oliver told us the story of someone who came in with a couple of $100,000 in stock market losses or something, and because he had losses, you know, his income showed as negative. Well, you just know that someone like that is not exactly who you intended the needs-based fares for.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
I'd like to suggest a question be asked different, because the only reason this is a discussion is because the county brought it to our attention that the county did not want to administer this. And in my informal, you know, very informal, not research, I'm talking to dozens and dozens and dozens of people. I haven't met anyone who opposes needs-based fares. I've met a lot of people and had discussion back and forth who oppose the government administering or subsidizing needs-based fares. So the question should not be whether we're for needs-based fares. The question becomes how are they administered and who administers them.
As long as we all recognize that we are paying for them through the regular fares, what isn't collected here is collected there. Yeah.
Okay, I think I don't know how long it's been, but I would like to move on. One of the things that we have learned is that the people who are crewing on the ferry must live on Lummi Island, and there's some question about whether that's critical. At least that was sort of brought up in some of our discussions. But secondly, because they are required to live on the island, they and their families receive free ferry passes, not just while they're working, but for the rest of their lives while they're living on the island.
Actually, they don't have to be living on the island.
Oh, whether or not they're living on the free ferry
Regardless.
passes?
Yes, but they have to be retired.
Yeah, they have to be retired.
What, okay.
Say it again.
What was that?
Say it again.
The crew would have a free pass if they're retired for the rest of their lives, for themselves and their families.
I think the question there really is not that they have a free pass, but that they have no pass. They have no, there's no record kept and there's no transaction.
Well, that's a really critical question, and it gets back to one of the other recommendations that we're probably going to make, which is that we develop an electronic ticketing and fare taking system so that we can take credit cards and you don't eat, what is it, $20,000 a year because somebody gets on the ferry, they don't have cash because nobody uses cash anymore, and they can't get off because
Well, and Barbara, one other issue on the cruise fares is it should be recorded as, it gets back to that accounting revenue. It should be recorded as revenue and as a benefit, and it should be taxable to the employee unless somehow it falls into the IRS commuting definition, which I don't think it does, but you never know.
So the question is reactions. Yes, Bob?
The reason for the crew having to live on the island is at midnight when that alarm goes off, the crew automatically goes down to the ferry, and we need to have somebody who will run the ferry.
Okay, good point. Yes.
So it's a difficult question to answer maybe if you don't look at sort of their union contract, which I'm sure has, you know, some balances in there as to what they have received as benefits. However, in my mind, when I think about it, we're subsidizing it in the end. And the thing that bothers me is not so much that if they need to have it, they get it. But if you think that one person has a large family and the other guy might just be themselves, it's very unequal in how they're receiving their benefits now from their job. One person's really getting a lot, and the other person, and it seems a little, I don't know how you balance that out, because it's as if one person's getting paid a whole much more than the other person.
Medical insurance.
What's that?
Medical insurance is the same way.
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of difficult how to ferret that out. I mean, obviously, I'd like us to save money, and if the ferry guys would give up that penny, why not? Why wouldn't we go for it? But they're not gonna like to hear that because
Barbara?
obviously they want that.
Another point is in transportation, every transportation industry this is a common benefit. I haven't seen it not offered, actually. Railroading, airlines, transit.
Well, airlines are not,
Well,
100%
I
there.
think, number one, I have a free Metro bus pass for the rest of my life because I retired from King County Metro. It's that transportation deal. But Mike can't use it. No family member can use it. And also, riding the bus isn't quite, there are alternative ways for me to not use the bus. I could drive here, there, and everywhere. Once you're on the island, you know that you will use the ferry. The pass is almost to get retired employees to keep on using the system, and we don't have that issue.
Yeah.
I would like to comment on the possibility that you have the employee when they retire continue on, but after their children get to an adult age, which is whatever you decide, that they no longer are part of it, because that chances are they could be elsewhere and still have passes to go all over.
Makes sense.
So it might be a logical cutting
Okay.
or helping the situation.
Okay, yes, sir.
Then how far-reaching is that? Does that include business vehicles and like working on the private business?
No, it doesn't.
It's supposed to not, but sometimes, yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Just a second, because I want to hear from people I haven't heard from. Mike?
I think it's more of an issue of fairness when the person goes down through and just bypasses certain cars and people that aren't familiar with who's in the car, a few kids. Why do they not pay and I do pay? I mean, it's very awkward if you don't know everybody, and I don't know of anybody that knows everybody.
I just want to clarify something, that was in their contract that they negotiated with the county and in lieu of getting a pay raise. So that is part of their negotiations, is what I was told by Ferry.
Barbara, Joan is actually the wife of a retired ferry employee, so she probably has perspective on this than the rest of us.
Okay. Great. As a recipient of this gift from the county, my husband was part of the negotiating team. I think it was the year 2000. The county brought forth that, can I say, opportunity to the crew. The crew did not certainly expect something like that. And if I'm correct, at that time, the crew had not received cost of living for many, many years, and it was a way of the county to say, hey, we're going to compensate you now and in the future. And the union was there, and of course the crew representatives, and they were absolutely floored that the county would bring this to them. Well, they certainly were not going to say no. And I feel very responsible for not abusing that. At the time, our children were away from home, and I don't even remember if it was to include, children over 18 or not. I can pass without a fare now, and my adult daughter and her family now live on the island, okay, and that's there.
Yeah.
So if there are abuses, unfortunately, I feel bad about that.
It's one of the questions. And one more comment if I may.
My comment is just that I don't know of any abuses, but I think that having an unlimited, undocumented benefit is really a problem. It's the same way that with county vehicles, that they're undocumented. That doesn't go into our equation for costs.
Yeah.
There should be some documentation, maybe some limits, a certain number of passes a month, or,
right. Good point. Okay, if I might, I would like to move on to the last question here because we have another presentation. Two more, actually. Many of you have heard discussions of a transportation benefit district so that property on of people on the island would be taxed at up to 75 cents per thousand to support the it's almost like a utility tax to support the basic operation of the fair, and it would be operating money, so it would reduce fares, the way we were been thinking about it anyway. I was doing little calculations this afternoon with Chandler, and if a house was worth $250,000 assessed value, 75 cents per thousand would cost $187 to that person, and it would raise $181,000 for the system. Those are very rough numbers because there's calculations that would affect that, like the houses where seniors don't pay as much probably would pay less. So it's not a huge amount. I don't know that. In other words, there's a lot of questions, but
you do pay for the fire department district.
Okay.
So even though you don't pay the regular prices.
Okay. So this might or might not apply. We'd have to figure that out. In general, I guess, can you raise your hand if you feel that we should continue to research this idea, or
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
This is solely for operating expenses. We're not talking about a new ferry, something like that.
Well, the county,
I'm really, that's a big distinction here. Whether
the county has had those discussions.
They have thought about that, believe me. The county is looking for nickels anywhere they can find it. And so this has obviously not been codified or anything else. I have some very strong feelings about this that aren't particularly positive. But it's going to have to be extremely well defined. Other than that, they're going to throw the kitchen sink in.
The county has had discussions about using that money to buy a new ferry. And I think in this proposal, what we're trying to talk about is a chunk of money that would support, like a utility does, the basic program itself. Before we vote, I guess I'll...
I'd like to know what Jim's reasons are.
What Jim's reasons are?
He said he had some feelings against it. I'd like to know what they are.
Well, first of all, we've run this ferry for 90+ years without this. I don't see why we need it. We're personally. This system needs to be reformed. We are seeing all kinds of places within the system in which I think we could cut the price of operation way down. Huge, in my opinion, overhead. And if you project it out, they're going for tripling it in a few years. If the county is allowed to continue doing what they're doing now, we're going to see $30 round trips. It's my opinion that this $200,000 for the road overdue, it shouldn't be in the fund. It's only going to be there because of the county's malfeasance.
Well, I may think 90,000 is a totally absurd lease for that parking lot.
Well,
it is.
You could also. But what I'm saying is,
for $2 million.
this is my opinion, before we go to this measure, we need to clean the system up and see what we've got.
So in other words, we should not vote on whether you prefer to raise all the revenues as variable cost, or we prefer to raise the same revenues as fixed versus variable cost.
I personally think this question is completely, totally premature.
Well, can I speak to this a little bit?
Please.
There's another aspect to sort of spreading the pain around, and that is the fact that we have 950 homes on this island, half of which are vacant all year long, except for a couple months in the summer.
Really?
Yeah,
Yep.
really.
Yep.
Yes.
Last census, 2010.
So what that means is that a small number of people are keeping the ferry alive, keeping it going, so that when you decide you want to fly in from wherever and use your summer home, it's there. And so this is a way to, if you were to couple this sort of a taxing thing with reduced fare for, say, 25 coupons, punch coupons, or somehow so that those of us who live here all year long would buy more of those than if you were only using it a couple of times. So we would be actually getting a benefit for that. So we'd be paying the tax, but we'd get a lower fare. So you could sort of do a combination. Anyway, that's another aspect of it that
I think it's very important. We're here 15 weeks a year. I think we ought to pay a fixed portion of whatever increase there is.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I think that's a really
Awesome.
important thing to know.
You know, I think preserving the community is something that we have to really keep in as a top value. The community of families and working people and needs-based and all the rest of it. So our community, our full-time community, is basically shouldering, as Riley said, that full burden. And it doesn't seem right. And furthermore, the people that have second homes here really agree with the idea that they will help support as homeowners, because they buy here because of our community as much as anything else, and our services. And that is supported by affordable ferry fares. So they benefit without paying, and they realize it, and I don't get the resistance I thought I would get, but it should be very well defined.
With all due respect, and those points are well taken, it's important for us to realize that that property tax also has us shouldering the burden for tourists and visitors to the island who are paying lower ferry rates because of our property taxes. So that would need to be coupled with some system to protect those of us who live here full time and use the ferry, you know, constantly.
What percentage, that scenario that you just presented, how much percentage would that reduce the ferry fee? Are we talking about $1 off or $5 off?
Yeah, it's not a huge amount. It's $160,000 out of a $2.5 million budget.
So it wouldn't amount to anything, really.
It's not a huge amount, but it does spread the cost to those people who use the ferry less. It's like when I was working for the city, the city council, there's a basic fee that's for a water system, like a utility. Everybody pays a basic fee. And then there's usage rates that go up and down depending on your usage. Or the same is true of sewer fees. And Mike had a really good point about that last meeting, I think, or 2 meetings ago. They're basic system fees that should be probably spread around all beneficiaries. And then there are variable fees on top of that for use.
Let's have a vote on it.
You want to vote on it? Carl wants to vote on it.
Can I ask one question? I've always wondered if anybody knows this, because I thought your estimation of a $250,000 property valuation, I guess that was an average. Does anybody actually know what the total assessed value is of property on
Yeah, Chandler does.
So is that 181,000 based on that, or you're certain?
It's not
See,
based on
it would make much more sense to base it on the actual dollar amount.
Mike, I know via Mike, so he's the guy to ask.
So if you don't look at any of the discounts on the what property is taxable, you've got taxable property and tax rates and all that. But tax base taxable property in Long Island is $263 million. But there are discounts to that.
Right, because there's open space and
Yeah,
all the
there's
other.
all kinds of other little funny things going on. But if you charge 75 cents per thousand, you generate about $200,000 a year, less than discounts, which aren't really significant.
Which is applied to 55% recovery. So when you say it's a budget of 2.5 million,
Right.
we're not applying it to that. We're applying it to whatever our fare box recovery is.
Actually, that's not clear in the ordinance.
We could make it that.
Well, if the
We can make
county
it that
agreed,
way.
we could do that. But presently, the ordinance says that fares only will recover 55% of, well, it's really, Pat, tell me if I'm wrong, but net operating costs, because they take operating costs.
There are a couple of adjustments to the deficit funding and the interest.
So as Jim said, it would have to be carefully defined.
Yeah.
Very carefully defined.
Right. Yes, sir.
What kind of a tax are you going to use to pay for a new ferry?
I can answer that. In 1929, the Ferry Central was condemned by the Coast Guard for having a bad boiler. In 1962, the Whatcom Chief was built by Whatcom County. They were both built by general obligation bonds of Whatcom County. I am willing to bet if you look at the percentage the ferry has of cost, overall cost between 1929 and 1962, we are getting far less than they did back then. It's my opinion, if the ferry should be done, it once again should be done by general obligation bonds. Now, part of this is, Lummi Island does not exist in a vacuum. All of us go to town, we buy groceries, we buy food, we buy lumber, supplies, or whatever. The bulk of our purchases go to the incorporated areas. The ferry system deficits are paid by the unincorporated areas. Therefore, the incorporated areas are basically getting a free pass. So, to me, having the general obligation bond, which includes everybody within Whatcom County, would be a much fairer way to do it, stacking it on the unincorporated area, and especially stacking it on this. The Whatcom County bought this ferry system from the Lummi Island Ferry Company in 1924 voluntarily. So anybody says, oh, it's not my problem. Well, if you didn't live here in 1924 and you didn't complain about it then, I don't think you've got much to complain about.
Okay. Carl wanted to vote. Would you like to say something before we move?
I just think in terms of the property tax idea, I think the concept is that, yes, there are summer people, and it's the commuters that are the backbone of the system that pay for it when the summer people come. I think that the summer people can also now buy same discount tickets as the commuters. I think there should be either a sunset clause on the tickets, that they're either monthly or whatever, that it's basically to benefit the commuters, and the summer people pay full fare. They don't get the same discount as the people who support the system all year long.
I guess I'm having a hard time to wrap my mind around this thing and really giving a yes or no answer. But one thing I think that people have to realize, that we're not just spreading the cost out to people that don't use the ferry much. We're spreading the cost out to the real estate property owners on Lummi Island. And we're not just helping out the to keep the wide variety of people on the island, which if we were, that'd be great. We're also supporting bringing tourists over here. We're supporting people that want to do business. We're subsidizing contractors coming over here. People that make money, we're subsidizing them. So we're not just subsidizing our low-income people. We're also subsidizing people that we may not want to subsidize. In my mind, we shouldn't be subsidizing them. They're making money off of it, and each individual should pay for that. So when you wrap your mind around that, it's a little more. It's not as cut and dried as, oh yeah, the people that don't use it much should pay more and protect the variety in the community. It has other effects, and I'm just not sure how I feel about it. I don't think I can answer it.
But of course, if you charge the person who's coming over to fix your water meter a huge amount to ride the ferry, guess what happens to the cost of fixing your water?
Correct, but then the person that has the bad water heater pays for it. The rest of the people don't pay for it. In other words, I would have no problem paying as a property owner to keep the wide variety of people that we have in this community, the low income and the elders and things like that. I do have a problem paying for some guy to fix his water heater, or someone to bring tourists over to make money off it. That I do have a problem with.
Okay. Did you have a question? Did I miss you?
I've already answered, thank you.
Oh, yes, Mike.
I keep coming back to this issue of fairness, and I think the whole taxing district is one of those. If there's a concept when you create special taxing districts, that the revenues created within those districts go for projects and benefits of things within the district. You wouldn't create a district in Iowa to benefit California, or vice versa. And so I think we have to look down the road a little bit and say, what's the new lease going to look like? And if we've got $8 million in road and turnabouts, and we've got some marina stuff rolled into that, if the major benefits are going to be going on that side of the water to Lummi Nation, then the county is fairly, the county can draw that line anywhere they want to. And so it's my opinion that the benefit will go to the Lummi Nation. We're not going to see road improvements. And so I think if they are included in the district along with us, then it's more fair that and there's by far more fee simple land within the tribe area than there is along the island. It's probably a 3-to-1 ratio. So our rate would probably go from 75 cents per thousand down to 25 or 20 cents. And then I'd feel much better about building roundabouts and sidewalks and artificial islands.
Okay, good. Let's just vote on fairly quickly. How many people would support our continuing to investigate a transportation benefit district?
Investigate?
It took investigate. We don't have enough data yet to make a recommendation. Okay, I think that's a clear majority. All right, thank you very much. We've got through a lot of questions. I hope we've made all of you think. The next presentation by Chandler is guaranteed to make you think. He always makes us think. And what we want to end up with is
that you're getting and ask you to fill it in. And this is a form that makes fares dependent upon certain decisions you make. There are value decisions and there are size decisions. And so when you get the form, you'll see that there is a number in blue here. And it's a minus number, which says that we're a little bit below where we want to be as far as fare return. And I should say, for this exercise, we're just assuming the cost that the county has given us. There may be some ways to reduce those, and there may be other changes in that we're projecting a 12% decline, continued decline this year in vehicle traffic, and perhaps we won't get that amount of decline. That would change these numbers too. So it's just an exercise. And over here, what you see is a whole list of 100% numbers. If we wanted to have everybody pay exactly the same fare, you would put 100% in all of those categories. There's what percent for multi-ride pedestrians. You can think of that as residents. I agree with Stephen that we need some sort of demarcation on residents getting the break. What percent for multi-ride vehicles and what percent for multi-ride trucks and trailers. And then we have what percent resident low income, what percent resident vehicle, what percent full-time student, pedestrian, and then there's an under how many years old. We have a under 12, what percent child pedestrian under 12 years old rides free. Some of the other two counties make it 5. I kind of like 18 myself because I like having families on the island, but so there's some blanks over here as far as age as well as the percentage. And then when you go over to the far left, the question is, let's see, something is not showing here. Excuse me. The top fare, yikes. No, I can't. All right. I'm going to switch over to the blank one. There we go, because this one you can see. In this one we have, on the left, we have car lengths. A passenger vehicle under 18 feet is 1 car length. 18 feet is sort of the standard for a passenger vehicle. It's what the state ferries use and the other county ferry systems. We right now use weight for trucks. And that's another question. Should we go to number of feet versus weight? But in this exercise, what I've done is I have passenger vehicles, pedestrians, cash bicycles, cash motorcycles, trucks or trailers less than 18 feet, 18 to 36 feet, and then 36 feet. If I decided that a pedestrian was worth 1/4 of a truck, I would enter 0.25. So the final piece of this is after you go down through these numbers, then you enter a cash fare for a passenger vehicle, non-resident, no discounts. What is this going to be? And if my voice were better and if we had set it up differently, we were going to go through a whole series of numbers here to show you what happens when you enter these numbers. But given the circumstances, I'd just like to ask you to fill in the percentage of discounts. You know, you go to a sale and you get 5% off for buying 6 instead of buying 1. But we're not talking about a quantity discount so much as we're talking about what discount do we want to give residents versus the occasional. Now, having said all that and not having gone through an example, is that clear or should I work through an example? Okay. I'm going to say that a Lummi Islander should only pay 75% of what a regular fare would be. And so I'm going to make that 75% true for pedestrians and for vehicles and for trucks, because we have some businesses on the island. So, okay. And then I get back down to resident pedestrians, low income. Well, something that's pretty frequent in the transportation industry is a 50% discount. So I'm just going to go with that. And I'm going to go with that for both. 58%, oh well. I like full-time student pedestrians on the island. I loved it having Western Washington College. So I'm just going to say, well, I don't want them to pay anything. And I don't want anyone under 18 years to pay anything. And I really want them bringing their friends onto the island. So I don't want their friends under 18 paying anything. So now I've got that done. Now I go over here and I think, well, if a pedestrian is 1/4 of a car, I think actually a motorcycle or a bicycle should be a little bit more. So I'll make it 1/3 of a car. And I'll choose to make a motorcycle half of a car. And I'll choose to make a truck and trailer that is the same length as a car, one, but one that's longer than that, because I know sometimes I can't park cars beside it, but sometimes I can, so it's 2 car lengths, but I'm going to make it 3, because sometimes you don't get someone beside it. And then, gee whiz, if it's over 2 car lengths, if it's 3 car lengths long, it's going to take up half the ferry. I know it's going to take up half the ferry, so I'm going to not call it 3 car lengths, I'm going to call it 6. So then I come over here and I say, well, okay, so how much should a cash vehicle pay? And I'm going to enter what a cash vehicle pays now. Oops. 613 doesn't make a lot of sense over here. Let me fix that. There. So, anyone want to guess what happens when I enter 13 here?
What?
Well, I'm $148,000 short of where I need to be to make this fair.
How many rides are you anticipating?
Well, last year we had 180,000, and with the 12% decline in passenger vehicles, and a 2%, 1.8% decline in every other category. You remember what it came out to be, Chandler? I don't. How many rides?
That's about a 70% fall, so about, say, what is that, about 165, 169,
165,000 rides if we keep on this downward path. So without working through this multiple times, it's a way to kind of express what you've just said verbally. How much of a discount do we get for being residents? How much do we discount for students and children? And I'm sorry, but my voice is failing.
How does the low income work compared to the rates, the multi-ride? So a low income multi-ride would be 50% of the 75%?
It, down here, it is 50%, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And to give you a shot at how the how the range goes, that would mean a $13 here would mean $9.75 a trip over here. Currently, with our $3 surcharge, we're paying $9.40. Currently, with our $3 surcharge, we're paying $4.60 for pedestrian. In this case, it would be $2.44, which would be slightly above what we paid in 2010.
Is this going to be available on the web so that people could do it interactively? And okay.
So you just go to the site that's in the bottom, the rate form, fare ratio form.xls, that you'll find it there or on
No.
Oh,
Half of
yeah, I'm sorry, that's where you find it if you're sitting at my computer. But, we'll get it to the Ferry Forum and to Click, and I'm sure they'll make it obvious where you find it. Yes.
It seems to me, I can't remember, a couple of years ago, there was a ferry surcharge for summer one time. Should you put that option on here so we could consider it?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Both of the other systems, county systems and the state, have a summer surcharge. I've heard some objection to that on the basis that we one time had a summer surcharge and then the county council just flat continued it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if it truly was a summer surcharge, it would make a lot of sense to me.
And I think we need your definition of resident or homeowner, what you really mean.
Well, I'm thinking, I mean, this is kind of off the wall, but one of the ways that you do that is something that was mentioned earlier. You time date the ferry passes so that you have to use them, say a 25 punch card you use within 6 months. Most people could probably use one a week. That would be a 6 month. If they lived here, but if they don't live here, then it's probably not going to be economical. A different idea I'd had, but I don't know how you would sell cards on the ferry, is to have a Lummi Island address.
Scammable.
Yeah.
Very scammable.
Very scammable.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
We call on. There's a lady on the far side of the room that has a question.
Yes.
I'll go next.
I'm just wondering, under resident child pedestrian, under about and what about, is that an error by chance? The 2010 fare was $40?
I'm sure it is, if that's what it says. Yes.
No, that's right. You're talking about this cell here?
I am talking about that cell.
Presumably that's, Diane, tell me if I'm wrong, presumably that's the punch card price for students that aren't present in school?
Yes, that's true, but it shouldn't be. It should just be the $4. And so, that's just I hit the wrong there. What happened is a non-resident pedestrian, even if they were only 15, paid the full pedestrian cash fare. There is currently no discount if you're over 12 and a non-resident.
So the fare next to it would also probably change, because I don't think it's projected to be 0, if I'm not mistaken. It would be 4 plus the $3 service
Well,
charge.
remember, I decided to play favorites. I did no kid under 18 up here is going to pay anything. So.
Oh, but by changing it to 4, it actually changes the. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if I go up here and I decide, well, okay, what they have to do is they have to pay 25% of the full fare. I can.
But this is a resident child.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, if you will excuse me, I'm just going to.
Right,
So,
no, okay. I just needed some clarification on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you do for a driver that's under 18 but is driving a car?
No discount.
Okay.
No discount. And we had are you going to do the page of the values? Our current fare structure expresses certain values. It says that anyone between the ages of 12 and 18 that lives on the island pays the fare in July and August, and the rest of the year they don't. But only if they're pedestrian. So what we're saying is we don't give a discount to drivers under 18, which is an okay value. What is another value is that we want people of all income levels on Lummi Island, so we offer a low income. We have another one that says that people who use the ferry a lot get a discount over those that don't. So there's a whole range of values that are expressed in our current fare structure, and that's where these questions came from.
Those statements matching up our community values with the fare structure are on that slide presentation that gave a couple weeks ago, and those are on both the Ferry document website and they're also on the Ferry forum. So you don't really have to go through it, but you don't have to.
I think Chandler has that on his computer, and he can throw those up there, because the next part of this is Chandler's going to take you through an interactive exercise. Yes.
Can you explain why, when you added 25% of the children over 18 in, the 148,000 didn't change, didn't go down, because now you're adding income in?
Well, part of it is that the we don't have counts on some of these, but there should have been a number that
theoretically
appeared.
it should have lowered that.
Yeah, it
number.
should.
Okay.
So I'm not quite sure what the story is. I'm sorry.
Diane.
Let's see. I-27 times Y8. Let's see. Oh. It should be Y9. No, resident child. Okay. I just had that entered in the wrong box. I'm sorry. 0.25. Enter. It still didn't change.
Diane?
Yeah.
Is there any way that you can distinguish between students and 18-year-olds? I don't have a problem giving discounts and free rides to students, real students. But I do have one where somebody just wants to ride back and forth to the ferry that's not a student.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know at least with the junior colleges or colleges, there are ID cards. I don't know what the high schools do here.
Has it been decided that weight will no longer be a criteria at all?
No, that has not been decided.
I believe there's an argument for weight. It's called fuel. Now, I have no idea what percent of the budget fuel is, but.
Fuel is actually, It ran $174,000 last year, so it's not a gigantic part of the budget. The main question is, are we selling deck space or not? And one of the ferry crew members suggested that we are selling deck space, and another one of the ferry crew members said, no, that would be too hard to measure. But then we had someone come along that said, well, you can just take one of these wheels where you measure length, and that's how the state ferry does it. So that is a controversial question. We would love to have your feedback.
I can answer part of that. The Lummi and ferry lane widths are illegal. It was a 1962 boat. It's no longer legal. There's no room to run a wheel most of the time between the cars. That might be part of it.
A lot of the state ferries, when you're on the boat, why they've got a box painted to the size of your parking place. That's how they work it.
Stripes on the deck.
Yeah.
I see your owner's manual, please.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I think that the average vehicle is 17 feet. 18? Huh, that's a really long vehicle.
I will answer that.
Right, I
That
think our
is-
big van was.
That is the standard car, which was established in the mid-1960s. The standard car is a 1964 Plymouth Fury 3 station wagon. And the reason that was done was because they figured there were cars bigger and there were cars smaller. The standard car is 18 by 6 feet wide, 6 feet wide. And actually, when you go through all the monkey business, it's not that far off. It really isn't.
Well, yes, I'm just saying that you could change the length of that, since most people drive smaller cars. I'm just.
The Alaska State Ferries uses 17.6. There are.
They have a huge ferry.
There are some that will go as low as 17, but I've never heard of anything under 17.
15, Alaska Ferry's 15.
One thing to keep in mind is that our ferry is 90 feet, and they're going to get 5 vehicles. They've had this debate before, actually, before the county council, that if you lower it to 15 feet, it's not going to give you enough feet to get a 6th vehicle on. And so why bother?
Well, I'm wondering now if we should move on to